Hello, 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 hello. It's me, Salty. How's it going? Welcome to my stream. It is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays, we read the book. Oh my god, that thing's back again. How? Why? Where did it come from? Okay. Small wins, chat. Okay. So, oh my goodness, it's just, can we please? There we go. Last week, we finished The Count of Monte Cristo, which is honestly one of my, I suppose it's one of my favourite books. One of my favourite stories, at least, because until I read it again, had finished it last week, I couldn't remember the entire book. I couldn't even remember how it ended. I only remember the movie, which is, well, both movies, which is pretty good. So, and yes, in the end, the Count sails off into the sunset with Haydée. He doesn't get back together with Mercedes. I wanted to get people's opinions on what to read next, because I have some options. I have a slight conundrum, because a lot of the books I want to read aren't exactly out of copyright yet. And I wanted to save A Christmas Carol for Christmas time, because I have Charles Dickens, and those 4 stories of Charles Dickens, classics that they are rather depressing. They are wordy. They are excessively wordy because Charles Dickens was paid by the word. But at least they were written in English, unlike The Count of Monte Cristo, which had to be translated. So, we have that options. Great Expectations. I started reading that book when I was younger, and I think that's the one where that young gentleman goes to visit that older lady, and she's a rich shut-in, and she just plays with him, like socially, like she just toys with him, gets his hopes up, and then dashes them. I think, I can't remember, something like that. Obviously, A Christmas Carol, everyone knows that one. And I'm not sure what Hard Times on A Tale of Two Cities. Don't think I've ever read those. Anyway, so Charles Dickens is an option. We also have another Japanese book, or another book about Japan, a fictional story called Cloud of Sparrows, which is a more up-to-date book. I say more up-to-date, I mean it's still set. It's more up-to-date than Shogun. It's still set in, I think it was about... Shogun was set at the time of when Japan closed, and this one's set at the time of Japan's reopening. So it includes a mix of Japanese and American characters. There is another Japanese series, of course, which I want to read at some point, called Across the Nightingale Floor, which is an entirely fictional one. This one's entirely fictional. This is a fictional Japan. I suppose Cloud of Sparrows is semi-fictional. The characters are fictional, but the setting is real. Across the Nightingale Floor is entirely fictional, except for the country it's set in. And also, if anyone wanted to hear... Oh, I'm sorry, I bumped the... If anyone wanted to hear, just in case somebody's got some kids that need a story read to them, I have a beautifully illustrated fairy tale book. And these have all the classics like Sleeping Beauty, Aladdin, Cinderella. And these are not the Disney ones, obviously. They're... Hello, Jeffy. These are the retellings of the classic fairy tales. So Aladdin is actually set in China. Things like that. So... I just opened this book now, and it is... Oh, it has that old book smell. A little bit musty. But the illustrations are still very pretty and not... I think I'll have to... I didn't realize the book was that big. I will have to adjust the... I'll have to adjust the camera for this one. So yes, there is that book too. Yeah, a little bit unsure about what to do tonight. Or which book, rather, to start reading. The only other thing I can think of is to read a book from my books that I keep on my computer. We have a lot of... we got Frankenstein. I don't have that in paper. I've only got that on my computer. By Mary Shelley. Anyway, there's also another series I have in the cupboard. It's the De Very series by Catherine Kerr, like Daggerfall. Reading from the computer caused my eye strain for you. Well, last time I read from... I have a Kindle. I read Good Omens from a Kindle. Askar, did you hear the book's options? I'm just trying to decide. I suppose I could just pick one and go for it. Who cares, right? I'm reading all the Japanese themed books. Not all of them. You had to go and fetch my med from the car. Okay. Well, just quickly again, we have Cloud of Sparrows, which is set at the time of when Japan reopens, as opposed to Shogun when Japan closes. We have another Japanese book, or book about Japan, called Across the Nightingale Floor. This is a fictional, like, not just fictional characters, but also fictional clans as well. So it's set in a fictional Japan at a undisclosed time, I think. There are hints, though. And yeah, that's like a 5-part series. The other option is Charles Dickens. I want to save A Christmas Carol for Christmas. I'll be reading Christmas Carol at Christmas. Because why not? The only problem is I don't know whether Charles Dickens will be boring or not. Because he's very wordy. Like, these paragraphs are horrendously big. Check out, where are we? The start of this paragraph. Can you find the end of the paragraph? No. Ah, yes, the end of the paragraph is on the next page. So yes, Charles Dickens is a wordy gentleman. Because that's what you call, if you ever heard the term perverse incentives, that's what that means. Charles Dickens was paid by the word, so he added more words. I'm leaning towards the Japanese book again. Okay, I bought that one in 2002. And I bought Across the Nightingale Floor. I think Across the Nightingale Floor is supposed to be set at the very north of Japan, like in... Oh, okay. Fantasy Japanese story. Okay, one of them. It says the 3 books that make up the Tales of the Otori are set in an imaginary country in a feudal period. Neither the setting nor the period is intended to correspond to any true historical era, though echoes of many Japanese customs and traditions will be found, and the landscape and sessions are those of Japan. So, yes. Fictional. However, Cloud of Sparrows has a mix of Japanese and American characters, and is set with fictional characters and I think fictional clans, but it's set in a real era. I would very much like to... 1861. There you go. 20 years after the Count of Monte Cristo. Oh no, that's right, Asko. I wasn't calling you out or anything. I was just getting it right in my head. Also, there is a sequel to Cloud of Sparrows called Autumn Bridge, which wasn't as good, but it was okay. Which one sounds most interesting? Well, I've read them all. Then again, I have... it has been some time since I read Across the Nightingale Floor. Also, this book is quite fast to read, because it is spaced quite a lot. Like it's... Hello, Forrest. Oh, it didn't give you notifications. Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, the book's only 350 odd pages. Fortunately, there are 5 of them. I'm leaning towards Across the Nightingale Floor, and we'll save Charles Dickens for Christmas. Also, once again, if anyone wants to do a fairy tale stream, I can do that, but I'll have to set up the camera so that it's zoomed back a bit, so you can see the lovely illustrations. They are the non-Disney versions, the traditional versions. Yeah. So, how do you? What's the thing when you put a segment in the stream? What's that called? Is there a command for that? Oh, hello. Boyo. Kitty. Hello, how you doing? Oh my goodness, all the bombs went off. He's a kitty raid. Hello. Have to get yourself a raid command, kitty. People can spam. I think it does break if you change categories. Ah, okay. Well, I'm not going to change categories. Kitty. Oh, thank you for giving Kitty a shout out. Didn't make a raid. That's okay, Kitty. Well, you just think one up now. Just be like, okay, well, whatever. Yeah, I just made it up. But anyway, thank you for coming in. Yes. I think the SO command, I'll have to mix it up.
Trust me, gay is in, gay is hot. I want some gay, gay it's gonna be.
Thank you, Forrest. Yes, I do the SO. Yeah. If you do exclamation mark SO, it does the drop down. I'll have to mix it up respond to the regular shout out command so that it does the drop down as well. Yeah.
Glory to you and your house.
Glory to you, Kitty. Okay, so we are going to be reading Across the Nightingale Floor, The Tales of the Otori, which is a story set in a fictional country, very much like Japan. It's basically fantasy Japan. Which is a good choice on part of the author, who learnt from some of the small mistakes of Shogun, which is that if you set it in a fantasy country which is like Japan, then it's hard for someone to get angry over the mistakes you make about various Japanese customs. I'll take the dust jacket off, because oddly enough, I don't want the dust jacket to get dusty or covered. Genius. Yeah, I thought so. Oh, Kitty. Kitty, I very much enjoy your streams. Oh, Kitty has a very relaxing way about her. Can't make anyone angry like that either. Yeah, I mean, people can complain, but they can't really dig in, I guess, because it's a fictional setting. As long as you don't go nuts and, do intentionally awful things. Oh my goodness. The author, Leon Hearn, also asks for forgiveness from the purists, for the liberties. So super casual, yeah. I have a problem with being productive when people are watching me. So I'm just like, I want to do all these things on stream, but I'm just like, I can't concentrate on doing the thing and talk as well. That's why at the end of the stream, after I've finished talking, my brain just doesn't work. My brain just isn't set up for socialization and problem solving at the same time. I don't know why. It sucks. Because there are times in life when you need to do those things at the same time, and I just can't. That's why I'm not very good in an office job. I work by myself. Socialization is too much effort. Yes. Sort of navigating it, but I had to give up that it should look a certain way. Do you mean your stream? High fives all the other introverts? Yeah, basically. You need to be able to I need to be able to focus. I could do a random stream, not at this time, obviously. And I could do some other things, but I wouldn't be talking very much, so it wouldn't. I don't know. Could I do like a work stream? Like, is that a thing? Like doing a work stream? Wouldn't be very entertaining, I don't think. It might be. The creating on stream whilst interacting. My brain wants it perfect. Reality suggests it's not a great plan. Co-working streams are a thing. Co-working streams. Okay. There is. I'd probably join you and do study. Okay. Well, I'll think about doing that then. Maybe while Ari's away. Because Ari's doing, I think, just tonight and tomorrow night this week. Because of DreamHack? Is it DreamHack? I can't remember. It's like body doubling, watching someone do things and doing some yourself, then having breaks together. DreamHack. She said she won't be doing Friday. Yes, I thought so excited for DreamHack. Oh my goodness, it's going to look very good. Send me pictures and things, or post pictures, one or the other. All right, so you need body doubling to get anything done? Okay. I wonder if there's a category for that. Just working. Also, I want to play a couple of games as well on stream. I recently got a game called Noita, and it's difficult. Oh my goodness, it's brutal. It's like once you die, that's it, you start over. Just working? Yeah. Twitch recently changed, what was it they changed? They changed one category to IRL. Noita, Noita. It is a pixel art game, but all the pixels have physics attached to them. Only works. Yes, and so you basically, Noita is it's translated to English, it means witch. So basically you start off with a wand, and the wand does a random effect, and then you go into a mine and start shooting things, collecting gold, and then you find a portal down there, and you jump in the portal, and it takes you to this place where you can swap out your wands and buy wands and swap the spells out. But I've only got up to like the third area, and apparently there are heaps of areas. And I'm just like, this is so difficult. And each time you start from scratch. Looks like Terraria. It has a sort of Terraria vibe to it, actually. But it's brutal. They keep going back and forth with what they call things. I feel like IRL's misleading. IRL, I'm watching stream. AFK, I might be cooking. Yeah, well, IRL's supposed to be for when you're out and about, out of the house, I guess. So I haven't actually looked at the category yet to see who's streaming and what's going on. My favourite is when someone takes, or a group of people take a game that is no longer played and just reuse the category. My favourite is I'm Only Sleeping. I don't watch any of those streams, but just the fact that it exists, that people use I'm Only Sleeping, the game category, for sleeping, is it Hi Nat, how's it going? How are you? Hope you're well. Yes, so I like it's reusing things that aren't in use anymore. Someone I follow had IRL streaming in the category, and they were riding a bike with a GoPro. Wonderful. There's a streamer I watch who does. She has a keyboard. She plays tunes that chat wants. Awful. I'm sorry to hear that, Nat. I'll just I guess kick back and relax. I'm about to start reading Across the Nightingale Floor. Just having a little chatty chat, getting some thoughts off my head. So yes, what was her name? I can't remember. She's a very lovely person with a lovely voice, and she does lovely music, and I can't remember her name. She's an Australian streamer in Melbourne, because everyone except for 5 people in Australia live in Melbourne, apparently. I was going to shout her out, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes I wish one could use like a vacuum cleaner to get the thoughts off from your head. I know, right? That's what meditation's supposed to be for. I don't meditate, but I don't know. I don't have the patience for it, probably. I don't want to be alone with my own thoughts. Stupid things. Okay. Oh. That is actually true, although 99% when I meditate I fall asleep. That's fine. Across the Nightingale Floor by Leon Hearn. And there's the different clans you've got down the side there. You originally had your keyboard set up near your desk, but that made it hard to get in and out behind the desk. Okay, it's still in the room, but in a different spot. Got the guitar out. Ooh. The book is for E, whoever E is. So, the 3 books that make up the Tales of the Autori are set in an imaginary country in a feudal period. Neither the setting nor the period is intended to correspond to any true historical era, though echoes of many Japanese customs and traditions will be found, and the landscape and seasons are those of Japan. Nightingale Floors. Oh no, I have to pronounce this now. Ugui Subari. Nightingale Floors are real inventions and were constructed around many residences and temples. The most famous examples can be seen in Kyoto at Nijo Castle and Chion Inn. I have used Japanese names for places, but these have little connection with real places, apart from Hagi and Matsue, which are more or less in their true geographical positions. As for characters, they are all invented, apart from the artist Seshu, who seemed impossible to replicate. I hope I will be forgiven by purists for the liberties I have taken. My only excuse is that this is a work of the imagination. Have good sleep, Forrest. Leon Hearn. The deer that weds the autumn bush clover, they say, sires a single fawn, and this fawn of mine, this lone boy, sets off on a journey, grass for his pillow. Manyoshu, Volume 9, number 1790, from the country of the 8 islands. Hiroaki Sato and Burton Watson. A poem. Here we have illustrations of the 3 countries, it says. And you can see the Otori smack bang in the middle there. Okay. Yeah, maps. Okay. The Otori are in the middle country. The east are the Tohan, and the west are the Seshu, or Seishu. And Hagi is to the north coast, in the middle. Chapter 1. My mother used to threaten to tear me into 8 pieces if I knocked over the water bucket, or pretended not to hear her calling me to come home as the dusk thickened and the cicadas' shrilling increased. Thank you, Askar. I would hear her voice, rough and fierce, echoing through the lonely valley. Where's that wretched boy? I'll tear him apart when he gets back. But when I did get back, muddy from sliding down the hillside, bruised from fighting, once bleeding great spouts of blood from a stone wound to the head, I still have the scar, like a silvered thumbnail. There would be the fire, and the smell of soup, and my mother's arms not tearing me apart, but trying to hold me, clean my face, or straighten my hair, while I twisted like a lizard to get away from her. She was strong from endless hard work, and not old. She'd given birth to me before she was 17. And when she held me, I could see we had the same skin, although in other ways we were not much alike, she having broad, placid features, while mine, I'd been told, for we had no mirrors in the remote mountain village of Mino, were finer, like a hawk's. The wrestling usually ended with her winning, her prize being the hug I could not escape from. And her voice would whisper in my ears the words of blessing of the hidden, while my stepfather grumbled mildly that she spoiled me, and the little girls, my half-sisters, jumped around us for their share of the hug and the blessing. So I thought it was a manner of speaking. Mino was a peaceful place, too isolated to be touched by the savage battles of the clans. I had never imagined men and women could actually be torn into 8 pieces, their strong, honey-coloured limbs, I guess a bit graphic, wrenched from their sockets and thrown down to the waiting dogs. Raised among the hidden, with all their gentleness. I did not know men did such things to each other. I turned 15 and my mother began to lose our wrestling matches. I grew 6 inches in a year, and by the time I was 16 I was taller than my stepfather. He grumbled more often that I should settle down, stop roaming the mountain like a wild monkey, marry into one of the village families. I did not mind the idea of marriage to one of the girls I'd grown up with, and that summer I worked harder alongside him, ready to take my place among the men of the village. But every now and then I could not resist the lure of the mountain, and at the end of the day I slipped away through the bamboo grove with its tall, smooth trunks and green slanting light, up the rocky path past the shrine of the mountain god, where the villagers left offerings of millet and oranges, into the forest of birch and cedar, where the cuckoo and the nightingale called enticingly, where I watched foxes and deer and heard the melancholy cry of kites overhead. That evening I'd been right over the mountain to a place where the best mushrooms grew. I had a cloth full of them, the little white ones like threads, and the dark orange ones like fans. I was thinking how pleased my mother would be, and how the mushrooms would still my stepfather's scolding. I could already taste them on my tongue. As I ran through the bamboo and out into the rice fields, where the red autumn lilies were already in flower, I thought I could smell cooking on the wind. The village dogs were barking, as they often did at the end of the day. The smell grew stronger and turned acrid. I was not frightened, not then, but some premonition made my heart start to beat more quickly. There was a fire ahead of me. Fires often broke out in the village. Almost everything we owned was made of wood or straw. But I could hear no shouting, no sounds of the buckets being passed from hand to hand, none of the usual cries and curses. The cicadas shrilled as loudly as ever. Frogs were calling from the paddies. In the distance, thunder echoed round the mountains. The air was heavy and humid. Something's afoot. Also, a bit of a content warning, chat. I can't remember how graphic this book is. Probably not too graphic, but still. There is combat and nasty things happen. I was sweating, but the sweat was turning cold on my forehead. I jumped across the ditch of the last terraced field and looked down to where my home had always been. The house was gone. I went closer. Flames still crept and licked at the blackened beams. There was no sign of my mother or my sisters. I tried to call out, but my tongue had suddenly become too big for my mouth, and the smoke was choking me and making my eyes stream. The whole village was on fire, but where was everyone? Then the screaming began. It came from the direction of the shrine, around which most of the houses clustered. It was like the sound of a dog howling in pain, except the dog could speak human words and scream them in agony. I thought I recognized the prayers of the hidden, and all the hair stood up on my neck and arms. Slipping like a ghost between the burning houses, I went towards the sound. The village was deserted. I could not imagine where everyone had gone. I told myself they had run away. My mother had taken my sisters to the safety of the forest. I would go and find them just as soon as I had found out who was screaming. but as I stepped out of the alley into the main street, I saw 2 men lying on the ground. A soft evening rain was beginning to fall, and they looked surprised, as though they had no idea why they were lying there in the rain. They would never get up again, and it did not matter that their clothes were getting wet. One of them was my stepfather. At that moment, the world changed for me. A kind of fog rose before my eyes, and when it cleared, nothing seemed real. I felt I had crossed over to the other world, the one that lies alongside our own, that we visit in dreams. My stepfather was wearing his best clothes. The indigo cloth was dark with rain and blood. I was sorry they were spoiled. He had been so proud of them. I stepped past the bodies, through the gates, and into the shrine. The rain was cool on my face. The screaming stopped abruptly. Inside the grounds were men I did not know. They looked as if they were carrying out some ritual for a festival. They had cloths tied around their heads. They had taken off their jackets, and their arms gleamed with sweat and rain. They were panting and grunting, grinning with white teeth, as though killing were as hard work as bringing in the rice harvest. Water trickled from the cistern where you washed your hands and mouth to purify yourself on entering the shrine. Earlier, when the world was normal, someone must have lit incense in the great cauldron. The last of it drifted across the courtyard, masking the bitter smell of blood and death. The man who had been torn apart lay on the wet stones. I could just make out the features on the severed head. It was Esau, the leader of the hidden. His mouth was still open, frozen in a last contortion of pain. The murderers had left their jackets in a neat pile against a pillar. I could see clearly the crest of the triple oak leaf. These were Tohan men, from the clan capital of Inuyama. I remembered a traveller who had passed through the village at the end of the 7th month. He'd stayed the night at our house, and when my mother had prayed before the meal, he had tried to silence her. "Don't you know the Tohan hate the hidden and plan to move against us? Lord Aida has vowed to wipe us out," he whispered. My parents had gone to Isao the next day to tell him, but no one had believed them. We were far from the capital, and the power struggles of the clans had never concerned us. In our village, the hidden lived alone alongside everyone else, looking the same, acting the same, except for our prayers. Why would anyone want to harm us? It seemed unthinkable. And so it still seemed to me as I stood frozen by the cistern. The water trickled and trickled, and I wanted to take some and wipe the blood from Esau's face and gently close his mouth, but I could not move. I knew at any moment the men from the Tohan clan would turn, and their gaze would fall upon me, and they would tear me apart. They would have neither pity nor mercy. They were already polluted by death, having killed a man within the shrine itself. In the distance I could hear with acute clarity the drumming sound of a galloping horse. As the hoofbeats drew nearer, I had the sense of forward memory that comes to you in dreams. I knew who I was going to see, framed between the shrine gates. I had never seen him before in my life, but my mother had held him up to us as a sort of ogre with which to frighten us into obedience. "Don't stray on the mountain. Don't play by the river, or Aida will get you." I recognized him at once. Aida Sadamu, lord of the Tohan clan. The horse reared and whinnied at the smell of blood. Aida sat as still as if he were cast in iron. He was clad from head to foot in black armour, his helmet crowned with antlers. He wore a short black beard beneath his cruel mouth. His eyes were bright, like a man hunting deer. Those bright eyes met mine. I knew at once 2 things about him. First, that he was afraid of nothing in heaven or on earth. Second, that he loved to kill for the sake of killing. Now that he had seen me, there was no hope. A sword was in his hand. The only thing that saved me was the horse's reluctance to pass beneath the gate. It reared again, prancing backwards. Aida shouted. The men already inside the shrine turned and saw me, crying out in their rough Tohan accents. I grabbed the last of the incense, hardly noticing as it seared my hand, and ran out through the gates. As the horse shied towards me, I thrust the incense against its flank. It reared over me, its huge feet flailing past my cheeks. I heard the hiss of the sword descending through the air. I was aware of the Tohan all around me. It did not seem possible that they could miss me, but I felt as if I had split in 2. Poor horse. Yep. I saw Aida's sword fall on me, yet I was untouched by it. I lunged at the horse again. It gave a snort of pain and a savage series of bucks. Aida, unbalanced by the sword thrust that had somehow missed its target, fell forward over its neck and slid heavily to the ground. Here we go. Horror gripped me, and in its wake, panic. I had unhorsed the Lord of the Tohan. There would be no limit to the torture and pain to atone for such an act. I should have thrown myself to the ground and demanded death, but I knew I did not want to die. Something stirred in my blood, telling me I would not die before Aida. I would see him dead first. I knew nothing of the wars of the clans, nothing of their rigid codes and their feuds. I had spent my whole life among the hidden, who are forbidden to kill, and taught to forgive each other. But at that moment, revenge took me as a pupil. I recognized her at once and learned her lessons instantly. She was what I desired. She would save me from the feeling that I was a living ghost. In that split second, I took her into my heart. I kicked out at the man closest to me, getting him between the legs, sank my teeth into a hand that grabbed my wrist, broke away from them, and ran towards the forest. 3 of them came after me. They were bigger than I was, and could run faster, but I knew the ground, and darkness was falling. So was the rain, heavier now, making the steep tracks of the mountain slippery and treacherous. 2 of the men kept calling out to me, telling me what they would take great pleasure in doing to me, swearing at me in words whose meaning I could only guess. But the 3rd ran silently, and he was the one I was afraid of. The other 2 might turn back after a while, get back to their maize liquor or whatever foul brew the Tohan got drunk on, and claim to have lost me on the mountain. But this other one would never give up. He would pursue me forever until he had killed me. As the track steepened near the waterfall, the two noisy ones dropped back a bit, but the third quickened his pace, as an animal will when it runs uphill. We passed by the shrine. A bird was pecking at the millet, and it flew off with a flash of green and white in its wings. The track curved a little round the trunk of a huge cedar, and as I ran with stone legs and sobbing breath past the tree, someone rose out of its shadow and blocked the path in front of me. I ran straight into him. He grunted as though I had winded him, but he held me immediately. He looked in my face, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Surprise. Recognition. Whatever it was, it made him grip me more tightly. There was no getting away this time. I heard the Tohan man stop. Then the heavy footfalls of the other two coming up behind him. "Excuse me, sir," said the man I feared, his voice steady. You have apprehended the criminal we were chasing. Thank you." The man holding me turned me around to face my pursuers. I wanted to cry out to him, to plead with him, but I knew it was no use. I could feel the soft fabric of his clothes, the smoothness of his hands. He was some sort of lord, no doubt, just like Aida. They were all of the same cut. He would do nothing to help me. I kept silent, thought of the prayers my mother had taught me, thought fleetingly of the bird. "What has this criminal done?" the Lord asked. The man in front of me had a long face like a wolf's. "Excuse me," he said again, less politely. "That is no concern of yours. It is purely the business of Aida Sadamu and the Tohan clan." "Ah," the Lord grunted. "Is that so? And who might you be to tell me what is or what is not my concern?" "Just hand him over," the wolf man snarled, all politeness gone. As he stepped forward, I knew suddenly that the Lord was not going to hand me over. With one neat movement, he twisted me behind his back and let go of me. I heard for the second time in my life the hiss of the warrior's sword as it is brought to life. The wolfman drew out a knife. The other two had poles. The Lord raised the sword with both hands, sidestepped under one of the poles, lopped off the head of the man holding it, came back at the wolfman and took off the right arm, still holding the knife. It happened in a moment, yet took an eternity. It happened in the last of the light, in the rain, but when I close my eyes I can still see every detail. Damn. The headless body fell with a thud and a gush of blood, the head rolling down the slope. The third man dropped his stick and ran backwards, calling for help. The wolfman was on his knees, trying to staunch the blood from the stump at his elbow. He did not groan or speak. "Oh, Kitty, I'm sorry. This might be a bit violent for you." Okay. The Lord wiped the sword and returned it to its sheath in his belt. Okay. Yes, I understand now. Come on, he said to me. I stood shaking, unable to move. This man had appeared from nowhere. He had killed in front of my eyes to save my life. I dropped to the ground before him, trying to find the words to thank him. Get up, he said. The rest of them will be after us in a moment. I can't leave, I managed to say. I must find my mother. Not now. Now is the time for us to run. He pulled me to my feet and began to hurry me up the slope. What happened down there? They burned the village and killed. The memory of my stepfather came back to me, and I could not go on. Hidden? Yes, I whispered. It's happening all over the fief. Aida is stirring up hatred against them everywhere. I suppose you're one of them? Yes. I was shivering. Although it was still late summer, and the rain was warm, I had never felt so cold. But that wasn't only why they were after me. I caused Lord Aida to fall from his horse. To my amazement, the Lord began to snort with laughter. That would have been worth seeing, but it places you doubly in danger. It's an insult he'll have to wipe out. Still, you are under my protection now. I won't let Aida take you from me. You saved my life, I said. It belongs to you from this day on. For some reason, that made him laugh again. We have a long walk, on empty stomachs and with wet garments. We must be over the range before daybreak, when they will come after us. He strode off at great speed, and I ran after him, willing my legs not to shake, my teeth not to chatter. I didn't even know his name, but I wanted him to be proud of me, never to regret that he had saved my life. I am Otori Shigeru, he said, as we began to climb the pass, of the Otori clan from Hagi. But while I'm on the road, I don't use that name, so don't you use it either. Hagi was as distant as the moon to me, and although I had heard of the Otori, I knew nothing about them, except that they had been defeated by the Tohan at a great battle 10 years earlier on the plain of Yegahara. What's your name, boy? Tomasu. That's a common name among the hidden. Better get rid of it. He said nothing for a while, and then spoke briefly out of the darkness. You can be called Teiko. Or is it Takeo? That. Is it Takeo or Taker? I'm not sure. I think Takeo. And so, between the waterfall and the top of the mountain, I lost my name and became someone new and joined my destiny with the Otori. Dawn found us, cold and hungry, in the village of Hinode, famous for its hot springs. I was already farther from my own house than I had ever been in my life. All I knew of Hinode was what the boys in my village said, that the men were cheats and the women were as hot as the springs, and would lie down with you for the price of a cup of wine. I didn't have the chance to find out if either was true. Oh, that'd be nice, Kitty. No one dared to cheat Lord Tory, and the only woman I saw was the innkeeper's wife, who served our meals. I was ashamed of how I looked. In the old clothes my mother had patched so often, it was impossible to tell what colour they had been to start with. Filthy, blood-stained. I couldn't believe that the Lord expected me to sleep in the inn with him. I thought I would stay in the stables. That is definitely something I want to do. But he seemed not to want to let me too often out of his sight. He told the woman to wash my clothes and sent me to the hot spring to scrub myself. When I came back, almost asleep from... Hello, Pixie. Yes. When I came back, almost asleep from the effect of the hot water after the sleepless night, the morning meal was laid out in the room, and he was already eating. He gestured to me to join him. I knelt on the floor and said the prayers that we always used before the first meal of the day. You can't do that, Lord Tory said, through a mouthful of rice and pickles. Not even alone. If you want to live, you have to forget that part of your life. It is over forever. He swallowed and took another mouthful. There are better things to die for. Pickles is a bit of a interesting breakfast choice. It's a bit acidic for the start of the day. Anyway, I suppose a true believer would have insisted on the prayers anyway. I wondered if that was what the dead men of my village would have done. I remembered the way their eyes had looked blank and surprised at the same time. I stopped praying. My appetite left me. Eat, the Lord said, not unkindly. I don't want to carry you all the way to Hagi. I forced myself to eat a little, so he would not despise me. Then he sent me to tell the women to spread out the beds. Hello, Sunny Day Enjoyer. What a nice username. Kick back and relax. Then he sent me to tell the woman to spread out the beds. I felt uncomfortable giving orders to her, not only because I thought she would laugh at me and ask me if I'd lost the use of my hands, but also because something was happening to my voice. I could feel it draining away from me, as though words were too weak to frame what my eyes had seen. Sharkies. Yeah. Anyway, once she'd grasped what I meant, she bowed almost as low as she had to Lord Tory, and bustled along to obey. Lord Tory lay down and closed his eyes. He seemed to fall asleep immediately. I thought I too would sleep at once, but my mind kept jumping around, shocked and exhausted. My burned hand was throbbing, and I could hear everything around me with an unusual and slightly alarming clarity. Every word that was spoken in the kitchens, every sound from the town. Over and over my thoughts kept returning to my mother and the little girls. I told myself I had not actually seen them dead. They had probably run away. They would be safe. Everyone liked my mother in our village. She would not have chosen death. Although she had been born into the hidden, she was not a fanatic. She lit incense in the shrine and took offerings to the god of the mountain. Surely my mother, with her broad face, her rough hands and her honey-coloured skin, was not dead, and was not lying somewhere under the sky, her sharp eyes empty and surprised, her daughters next to her. My own eyes were not empty. They were shamefully full of tears. I buried my face in the mattress and tried to will the tears away. I could not keep my shoulders from shaking or my breath from coming in rough sobs. After a few moments, I felt a hand on my shoulder, and Lord Torrey said quietly, "Death comes suddenly, and life is fragile and brief. No one can alter this, either by prayers or spells. Children cry about it, but men and women do not cry. They have to endure." His own voice broke on this last word. Lord Torrey was as grief-stricken as I was. His face was clenched, but the tears still trickled from his eyes. I knew who I wept for, but I did not dare question him. I must have fallen asleep, for I was dreaming I was at home, eating supper out of a bowl as familiar to me as my own hands. There was a black crab in the soup, and it jumped out of the bowl and ran away into the forest. I ran after it, and after a while I didn't know where I was. I tried to cry out, "I'm lost," but the crab had taken away my voice. I woke to find Lord Torrey shaking me. "Get up." I could hear that it had stopped raining. The light told me it was the middle of the day. The room seemed close and sticky, the air heavy and still. The straw matting smelled slightly sour. I don't want Aida coming after me with 100 warriors, just because a boy made him fall off his horse. Lord Torrey grumbled good-naturedly. We must move on quickly. I didn't say anything. My clothes, washed and dried, lay on the floor. I put them on silently. Though how you dared stand up to Sadamu when you're too scared to say a word to me. I wasn't exactly scared of him, more like in complete awe. It was as if one of God's angels, or one of the spirits of the forest, or a hero from the old days, had suddenly appeared in front of me and taken me under his protection. I could hardly have told you then what he looked like, for I did not dare look at him directly. When I did sneak a glance at him, his face in repose was calm. Yeah. Thank you for following, friendo. Not exactly stern, but expressionless. I did not then know the way it was transformed by his smile. He was perhaps 30 years old, or a little younger, well above medium height, broad-shouldered. His hands were light-skinned, almost white, well-formed, with long restless fingers that seemed made to shape themselves around the sword's handle. They did that now, lifting the sword from where it lay on the matting. The sight of it sent a shudder through me. I imagined it had known the intimate flesh, the lifeblood of many men, had heard their last cries. It terrified and fascinated me. It's not fear, it's reverence. Yeah. Got the recommendation from another, then I saw the emotes. Oh. Welcome in, Shale. Now, I'm not sure whether this is Jato or Yato. I'm not sure how to pronounce that in Japanese, or, Anyway. The sword's name is Jato. Jato, Lord Otori said, noticing my gaze. He laughed and patted the shabby black sheath. In travelling clothes, like me. At home we both dress more elegantly. Jato, I repeated under my breath, the snake sword, which had saved my life by taking life. I'm currently reading Across the Nightingale Floor. Which is a fictional story, obviously. We left the inn and resumed our journey past the sulphur-smelling hot springs of Hinode and up another mountain. Think or like in opera, more than or sounds than an oo sound. Otori. Like that? Or Jato. Anyway, left the inn. That's it. The rice paddies gave way to bamboo groves, just like the ones around my village. Then came chestnuts, maples, and cedars. The forest steamed from the warmth of the sun, although it was so dense that little sunlight penetrated to us below. Twice snakes slithered out of our path. One the little black adder, and another larger one, the colour of tea. It seemed to roll like a hoop, and it leaped into the undergrowth as though it knew Jato might lop off its head. You mentioned acidic for breakfast as I eat capers, artichoke hearts, and feta. I just thought pickles were a bit too acidic for me for breakfast. The strongest acidic I could have for breakfast is probably like tomato or something. Cicadas sang stridently, and the min-min moaned with head-splitting monotony. Pickles are great for brekkie. Oh, okay. I'll have to give it a go. We went at a brisk pace despite the heat. Sometimes Lord Otori would outstride me, and I would toil up the track, as if utterly alone, hearing only his footsteps ahead, and then come upon him at the top of the pass, gazing out over the view of mountains, and beyond them, more mountains stretching away, and everywhere the impenetrable forest. It's true, orange juice, yep, that's very true. He seemed to know his way through this wild country. We walked for long days and slept only a few hours at night, sometimes in a solitary farmhouse, sometimes in a deserted mountain hut. Apart from the places we stopped at, we met few people on this lonely road. A woodcutter, 2 girls collecting mushrooms who ran away at the sight of us, a monk on a journey to a distant temple. After a few days, we crossed the spine of the country. We still had steep hills to climb, but we descended more frequently. The sea became visible, a distant glint at first, then a broad, silky expanse with islands jutting up like drowned mountains. I had never seen it before, and I couldn't stop looking at it. Sometimes it seemed like a high wall about to topple across the land. My hand healed slowly, leaving a silver scar across my right palm. The villages became larger, until we finally stopped for the night in what could only be called a town. It was on the high road between Inuyama and the coast, and had many inns and eating places. We were still in Tohan territory, and the triple oak leaf was everywhere, making me afraid to go out in the streets. Yet, I felt the people at the inn recognized Lord Otori in some way. The usual respect people paid to him was tinged by something deeper, some old loyalty that had to be kept hidden. Pixie, should be having Pepsi with breakfast. Then do what you want, I'm not your mum. They treated me with affection, even though I did not speak to them. I had not spoken for days, not even to Lord Otori. It did not seem to bother him much. He was a silent man himself, wrapped up in his own thoughts. But every now and then, I would sneak a look at him and find him studying me, with an expression on his face that might have been pity. He would seem to be about to speak, then he'd grunt and mutter, never mind, things can't be helped." The servants were full of gossip, and I liked listening to them. They were deeply interested in a woman who had arrived the night before and was staying another night. She was travelling alone to Inuyama, apparently to meet Lord Aida himself, with servants, naturally, but no husband or brother or father. She was very beautiful, though quite old, 30 at least. Okay, calm down. Very nice, kind, and polite to everyone, but travelling alone. What a mystery. The cook
Take
claimed...
a fucking sip, babes.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Called out. Yes. The cook claimed to know that she was recently widowed and was going to join her son in the capital, but the chief maid said that was nonsense. The woman had never had children, never been married, and then the horse boy, who was stuffing his face with his supper, said he had heard from the palanquin bearers that she had had 2 children, a boy who died and a girl who was a hostage in Inuyama. The maids sighed and murmured that even wealth and high birth could not protect you from fate, and the horse boy said, "At least the girl lives, for they are Maruyama, and they inherit through the female line." How the hell did Horseboy know that? I'm not going to start nitpicking. This news brought a stir of surprise and understanding, and renewed curiosity about Lady Maruyama, who held her land in her own right, the only domain to be handed down to daughters, not to sons. "No wonder she dares to travel alone," the cook said. Carried away by his success, the horseboy went on. But Lord Aida finds this offensive. He seeks to take over her territory, either by force or, they say, by marriage. The cook gave him a clip round the ear. Watch your words. You never know who's listening. We were a Tory once, and will be again, the boy muttered. The chief maid saw me hanging about in the doorway and beckoned me to come in. Where are you travelling to? You must have come a long way. I smiled and shook my head. One of the maids, passing on her way to the guest rooms, patted me on the arm and said, He doesn't talk. Shame, isn't it? What happened? The cook said. Someone throw dust in your mouth, like the Ainu dog? Is it Ainu? Inu? Ainu? Ainu, I think it is. Ainu. I hope he has sense not to talk. They were teasing me, not unkindly, when the maid came back, followed by a man I gathered was one of the Maruyama servants, wearing on his jacket the crest of the mountain, enclosed in a circle. To my surprise, he addressed me in polite language. My lady wishes to talk to you. I wasn't sure if I should go with him, but he had the face of an honest man, and I was curious to see the mysterious woman for myself. I followed him along the passageway and through the courtyard. He stepped onto the veranda and knelt at the door to the room. He spoke briefly, then turned to me and beckoned to me to step up. I snatched a rapid glance at her, then fell to my knees and bowed my head to the floor. I was sure I was in the presence of a princess. Her hair reached the ground in one long sweep of black silkiness. Her skin was as pale as snow. She wore robes of deepening shades of cream, ivory, and dove grey embroidered with red and pink peonies. She had a stillness about her that made me think first of the deep pools of the mountain, and then, suddenly, of the tempered steel of Jato, the snake's sword. They tell me you don't talk, she said, her voice as quiet and clear as water. I felt the compassion of her gaze, and the blood rushed to my face. You can talk to me, she went on. Reaching forward, she took my hand and with her finger drew the sign of the hidden on my palm. It sent a shock through me, like the sting of a nettle. I could not help pulling my hand away. Tell me what you saw, she said, her voice no less gentle, but insistent. When I didn't reply, she whispered, It was Aida Sadamu, wasn't it? I looked at her almost involuntarily. She was smiling, but without mirth. And you are from the hidden, she added. Lord Otori had warned me against giving myself away. I thought I'd buried my old self along with my name, Tomasu. But in front of this woman I was helpless. I was about to nod my head when I heard Lord Otori's footsteps cross the yard. I realized that I recognized him by his tread, and I knew that a woman followed him, as well as the man who had spoken to me. And then I realized that if I paid attention, I could hear everything in the inn around me. I heard the horseboy get up and leave the kitchen. I heard the gossip of the maids, and knew each one from her voice. This acuteness of hearing which had been growing slowly ever since I'd ceased to speak, now came over me with a flood of sound. It was almost unbearable, as if I had the worst of fevers. I wondered if the woman in front of me was a sorceress who had bewitched me. I did not dare lie to her, but I could not speak. I was saved by the woman coming into the room. She knelt before Lady Maruyama and said quietly, "His lordship is looking for the boy." "Ask him to come in," the lady replied. "And, Sachi, would you kindly bring the tea utensils?" Lord Otori stepped into the room, and he and Lady Maruyama exchanged deep bows of respect. They spoke politely to each other like strangers, and she did not use his name, yet I had the feeling they knew each other well. There was a tension between them that I would understand later, but which then only made me more ill at ease. "The maids told me about the boy who travels with you," she said. "I wished to see him for myself." "Yes, I am taking him to Hagi. He is the only survivor of a massacre. I did not want to leave him to Sadamu." He did not seem inclined to say anything else, but after a while added, "I have given him the name of Takeo." She smiled at this, a real smile. "I'm glad," she said. "He has a certain look about him." "Do you think so? I thought it too." Sachi came back with a tray, a tea kettle, and a bowl. I could see them clearly as she placed them on the matting, at the same level as my eyes. The bowl's glaze held the green of the forest and the blue of the sky. "One day you will come to Maruyama, to my grandmother's tea house," the lady said. "There we can do the ceremony as it should be performed. But for now, we will have to make do as best we can." She poured the hot water, and a bittersweet smell wafted up from the bowl. "Sit up, Takeo," she said. She was whisking the tea into a green foam. She passed the bowl to Lord Otori. He took it in both hands, turned it 3 times, drank from it, wiped the lip with his thumb, and handed it with a bow back to her. She filled it again and passed it to me. I carefully did everything the Lord had done, lifted it to my lips, and drank the frothy liquid. Its taste was bitter, but it was clearing to the head. It steadied me a little. We never had anything like this in Mino. Our tea was made from twigs and mountain herbs. I wiped the place I had drunk from and handed it back to Lady Maruyama, bowing clumsily. I was afraid Lord Otori would notice and be ashamed of me, but when I glanced at him, his eyes were fixed on the lady. She then drank herself. The 3 of us sat in silence. There was a feeling in the room of something sacred, as though we had just taken part in the ritual meal of the hidden. A wave of longing swept over me for my home, my family, my old life. But although my eyes grew hot, I did not allow myself to weep. I would learn to endure. On my palm, I could still feel the trace of Lady Maruyama's fingers. The inn was far larger and more luxurious than any of the other places we had stayed during our swift journey through the mountains. And the food we ate that night was unlike anything I had ever tasted. We had eel in a spicy sauce, and sweet fish from the local streams, many servings of rice, whiter than anything in Mino, where if we ate rice 3 times a year we were lucky. I drank rice wine for the first time. Lord Ettore was in high spirits, floating, as my mother used to say. His silence and grief dispelled, and the wine worked its cheerful magic on me too. When we had finished eating, he told me to go to bed. He was going to walk outside a while to clear his head. The maids came and prepared the room. I lay down and listened to the sounds of the night. The eel or the wine had made me restless, and I could hear too much. Every distant noise made me start awake. I could hear the dogs of the town bark from time to time, one starting, the others joining in. After a while I felt I could recognize each one's distinctive voice. I thought about dogs, how they sleep with their ears twitching, and how only some noises disturb them. I would have to learn to be like them, or I would never sleep again. When I heard the temple bells toll at midnight, I got up and went to the privy. The sound of my own piss was like a waterfall. I poured water over my hands from the cistern in the courtyard and stood for a moment listening. It was a still, mild night, coming up to the full moon of the 8th month. The inn was silent. Everyone was in bed and asleep. Frogs were croaking from the river and the rice fields, and once or twice I heard an owl hoot. Hoot hoot. As I stepped quietly onto the veranda, I heard Lord Ettore's voice. For a moment I thought he must have returned to the room and was speaking to me, but a woman's voice answered him. It was Lady Mariama. I knew I should not listen. It was a whispered conversation that no one could hear but me. I went into the room, slid the door shut, and lay down on the mattress, willing myself to fall asleep. But my ears had a longing for sound that I could not deny, and every word dropped clearly into them. They spoke of their love for each other, their few meetings, their plans for the future. Much of what they said was guarded and brief, and much of it I did not understand then. I learned that Lady Mariama was on her way to the capital to see her daughter, and that she feared Aida would again insist on marriage. His own wife was unwell and not expected to live. The only son she had borne him, also sickly, was a disappointment to him. "You will marry no one but me," he whispered, and she replied, "It is my only desire. You know it." He then swore to her he would never take a wife, nor lie with any woman unless it was she. And he spoke of some strategy he had, but did not spell it out. I heard my own name, and conceived that it involved me in some way. I realized that there was a long existing enmity between him and Aida that went all the way back to the battle of Yegahara. "We will die on the same day," he said. "I cannot live in a world that does not include you." Then the whispering turned to other sounds, those of passion between a man and a woman. I've read enough isekai to know where this is going. I'm not exactly sure what that is, Asuka. I put my fingers in my ears. I knew about desire, had satisfied my own, with the other boys of my village, or with the girls in the brothel, but I knew nothing of love. Whatever I heard, I vowed to myself I would never speak of it. Reincarnation, transported to other world type stories. Okay, I've seen a few series like that. None that I can recall but I know I've seen at least a couple. Yes. Whatever I heard, I vowed to myself I would never speak of it. I would keep these secrets as close as the hidden keep theirs. I was thankful I had no voice. My brain, the Humpty Dance is your chance to do the hump. Kitty. Let's get it on. I did not see the lady again. We left early the next morning, an hour or so after sunrise. Did that song go there? I don't know. It was already warm. Monks were sprinkling water in the temple cloisters, and the air smelt of dust. Yes, I have two ranges. I have this one and I have a deeper range, but I don't have a high range, unfortunately, so I can't do Marvin Gaye. The maids at the inn had brought us tea, rice, and soup before we left, one of them stifling a yawn as she set the dishes before me, and then apologizing to me and laughing. Current one in falsetto won't get there? Not without training. It was the girl who had patted me on the arm the day before, and when we left she came out to cry, "Good luck, little lord. Good journey. Don't forget us here." I wished I was staying another night. The Lord laughed at it, teasing me and saying he would have to protect me from the girls in Hagi. He could hardly have slept the previous night, yet his high spirits were still evident. He strode along the highway with more energy than usual. I thought we would take the post road to Yamagata, but instead we went through the town, following a river smaller than the wide one that flowed alongside the main road. We crossed it, where it ran fast and narrow between boulders, and headed once more up the side of the mountain, or up the side of a mountain. We had brought food with us from the inn for the day's walk. For once we were beyond the small villages along the river, we saw no one. It was a narrow, lonely path, and a steep climb. When we reached the top, we stopped and ate. It was late afternoon, and the sun sent slanting shadows across the plain below us. Beyond it, towards the east, lay range after range of mountains, turning indigo and steel grey. "That is where the capital is," Lord Otori said, following my gaze. I thought he meant Inuyama, and was puzzled. He saw it and went on. "No, the real capital of the whole country, where the Emperor lives, way beyond the farthest mountain range. Inuyama lies to the southeast. He pointed back in the direction we had come. It's because we are so far from the capital, and the emperor is so weak, that warlords like Aida can do as they please. His mood was turning somber again. And below us is the scene of the Otori's worst defeat, where my father was killed. That is Yegahara. The Otori were betrayed by the Noguchi, who changed sides and joined Aida. More than 10,000 died. He looked at me and said, I know what it is like to see those closest to you slaughtered. I was not much older than you are now. I stared out at the empty plain. I could not imagine what a battle was like. I thought of the blood of 10,000 men soaking into the earth of Yegahara. In the moist haze, the sun was turning red, as if it had drawn up the blood from the land. Kites wheeled below us, calling mournfully. I did not want to go to Yamagata, Lord Otori said as we began to descend the path, partly because I am too well known there, and for other reasons. One day I will tell them to you. But it means we will have to sleep outside tonight, grass for our pillow, for there is no town near enough to stay in. We will cross the fief border by a secret route, I know, and then we will be in Otori territory, safely out of reach of Sadamu. I did not want to spend the night on the lonely plain. I was afraid of 10,000 ghosts, and of the ogres and goblins that dwelled in the forest around it. The murmur of a stream sounded to me like the voice of the water spirit, and every time a fox barked or an owl hooted, I came awake, my pulse racing. At one stage the earth itself shook in a slight tremor, making the trees rustle and dislodging stones somewhere in the distance. I thought I could hear the voices of the dead, calling for revenge, and I tried to pray, but all I could feel was a vast emptiness. The secret God, whom the hidden worship, had been dispersed with my family. Away from them, I had no contact with him. Next to me, Lord Otori slept as peacefully as if he had been in the guest room of the inn. Yet I knew that, even more than I was, he would have been aware of the demands of the dead. I thought with trepidation about the world I was entering, a world that I knew nothing about, the world of clans with their strict rules and harsh codes. I was entering it on the whim of this lord, whose sword had beheaded a man in front of my eyes, who as good as owned me. I shivered in the damp night air. We rose before dawn and, as the sky was turning grey, crossed the river that marked the boundary to the Otori domain. After Yegahara, the Otori, who had formerly ruled the whole of the middle country, were pushed back by the Tohan into a narrow strip of land between the last range of mountains and the northern sea. On the main post road the barrier was guarded by Aida's men, but in this wild, isolated country there were many places where it was possible to slip across the border, and most of the peasants and farmers still considered themselves Otori and had no love for the Tohan. Lord Otori told me all this as we walked that day, the sea now always on our right-hand side. He also told me about the countryside, pointed out the farming methods used, the dikes built for irrigation, the nets the fishermen wove, the way they extracted salt from the sea. He was interested in everything and knew about everything. Gradually, the path became a road and grew busier. Now there were farmers going to market at the next village, carrying yams and greens, eggs and dried mushrooms, lotus root and bamboo. Lotus root and bamboo. We stopped at the market and brought new straw sandals, for ours were falling to pieces. That night, when we came to the inn, everyone there knew Lord O'Tory. They ran out to greet him with exclamations of delight and flattened themselves to the ground in front of him. The best rooms were prepared, and at the evening meal course, the best rooms were prepared, and at the evening meal, course after course of delicious food appeared. He seemed to change before my eyes. Of course I had known he was of high birth, of the warrior class, but I still had no idea exactly who he was, or what part he played in the hierarchy of the clan. However, it was dawning on me that it must be exalted. I became even more shy in his presence. I felt that everyone was looking at me sideways, wondering what I was doing, longing to send me packing with a cuff on the ear. How are we doing? The next morning, he was wearing clothes befitting his station. Horses were waiting for us, and 4 or 5 retainers. They grinned at each other a bit when they saw I knew nothing about horses, and they seemed surprised when Lord O'Tory told one of them to take me on the back of his horse, although, of course, none of them dared to say anything. On the journey, they tried to talk to me. They asked me where I'd come from and what my name was. But when they found I was mute, they decided I was stupid and deaf too. They talked loudly to me in simple words, using sign language. I didn't care much for jogging along on the back of the horse. The only horse I'd ever been close to was Aida's, and I thought all horses might bear me a grudge for the pain I'd caused that one. And I kept wondering what I would do when we got to Haggy. I imagined I would be some kind of servant in the garden or the stables. But it turned out Lord O'Tory had other plans for me. On the afternoon of the 3rd day since the night we had spent on the edge of Yeghara, we came to the city of Haggy, the castle town of the O'Tory. It was built on an island flanked by 2 rivers and the sea. From a spit of land to the town itself ran the longest stone bridge I had ever seen. It had 4 arches, through which the ebbing tide raced, and walls of perfectly fitted stone. I thought it must have been made by sorcery, and when the horses stepped onto it, I couldn't help closing my eyes. The roar of the river was like thunder in my ears, but beneath it I could hear something else, a kind of low keening that made me shiver. At the centre of the bridge, Lord O'Tory called to me. I slipped from the horse's back and went to where he had halted. A large boulder had been set into the parapet. It was engraved with characters. "Can you read, Takeo?" I shook my head. "Bad luck for you. You will have to learn," he laughed. "And I think your teacher will make you suffer. You'll be sorry you left You'll be sorry you left your wild life in the mountains." He read aloud to me. The Otori clan welcomes the just and the loyal. Let the unjust and the disloyal beware. Beneath the characters was the crest of the heron. I walked alongside his horse to the end of the bridge. They buried the stonemason alive beneath the boulder, Lord Otori remarked offhandedly. So he would never build another bridge to rival this one, and so he could guard his work forever. You can hear his ghost at night talking to the river. Well, that's casually horrible. Not only at night. It chilled me, thinking of the sad ghost imprisoned within the beautiful thing he had made. But then, we were in the town itself, and the sounds of the living drowned out the dead. I think I'm going to leave it there for this evening. Yeah, long chapters. Bookmark. Thank you, Pixie. Ah, that'll be right. There's a few pages left to the end of the chapter. But bugger it. 2 hours pass quickly. It's quite enjoyable. I'm glad. I was, a little bit worried. This one's a lot faster paced than, say the Count of Monte Cristo. But yes, I'm glad people are enjoying it. Oh, okay. So, we've already shouted out Kitty. Now then. 2 completely different writing styles. Oh yes, definitely. Leon Hearn is... I think Leon Hearn's a lady, actually. And might be a author's name. Like, might be a... What do you call him? Pseudonym? I don't know. Yeah, Leon Hearn. 2002 it was published. So, yes, very different writing style from 1840. She's a lady. Whoa, 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 she's a lady. That's who it was. I remembered the name of the person I wanted to mention earlier. She does music. Shout out Lara 6683.
Glory to you and your house.
Glory to you, Lara. Yes, Lara. I'd love to hear Lara reading out a book. But yes, she does chatting and plays keyboard and does chat requests. So if you ever want some video game music, and she has lots of Xena emotes, which is very cool. So yes, another Aussie. So that's my random shout out for the day. So we raided Ari yesterday. Are we going to raid Ari again? Or perhaps Asage? Maybe Emmy Cherry. Acid, you reckon? Yeah, Acid's having a time. She's having crap brain stuff. Or crappy brain time. She has a nice brain, it's just being crappy at the moment. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to raid Acid, then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to watch Ari and Acid stream at the same time. Alright, so, raid. It's a salty raid. There's your raid commands. If you're not subscribed, the first one. If you're subscribed, the second one. Your mind is a dangerous neighborhood. Don't go there alone, chat. Yes, that's why I don't meditate. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. And thank you for helping me pick a new book. So yes, this book is very lurk and go horizontal. Thank you, Kitty. Thank you for joining me on the raid. We'll raid now. Acid.exe. Thank you, Pixie. Thank you. Everyone also follow Pixie if you like stories. Pixie reads every Sunday or Monday morning for me. Anyway, join me for the raid to Acid, who is a friend who needs a bit of cheering up. She's playing Stardew Valley, and I've already been in her stream before, so there shouldn't be a raid sound when I join. Yeah, so go and say hi to Acid, and then, I don't know, bugger off or if you want, or stick around. It's up to you.